Hello, everyone, and welcome to Big News Wednesday. And you know what that means? Jayar Jackson returns. Jayar, how's it going?
What's going on? I have a beef with Big News Wednesday. Can I voice my beef? It's only gonna take me a couple seconds.
You can't, it's your day.
Well, thank you. It could be a bigger News Wednesday, but John Adirola does not come on the watch list. He just doesn't do it.
You're right. To be fair to Jayar, I have rejected 100% of the 0 invitations I've ever received to be on the watch list.
The thing is my producers and I don't like to bug people that do shows in competition with the watch list. So I'm just like, there must be a conflict of interest there somewhere. I heard you have what? I heard you have issues with a one Emma Vigeland who can't come on your show. I just figured
because she has to be on a different show at the same time.
Weird how that works, Adirola. What's that show called again? The pre-destruction or something? What do you call it?
The pre-destruction. I have my pre-port, which is on before everything on the network. But no, her show's at the same time. Why don't we do? You know what we should do? Well, would it be a better idea to do Wednesday where we're each on each other's shows, or is that a worse idea? Maybe that's a worse idea.
I think that's.
If you invite me, I will do an episode of the show. We'll just have to, modify the way that we produce our show that day, but that's fine.
What we'll do is
the invitation, I'll do it.
Okay, we'll make sure that there's a day when John's like on vacation.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll definitely come back for that. Maybe a Saturday, why not? 3 a.m. Let's do that. Anyway, that's something to look forward to. You got a lot of stuff to look forward to in the near future, actually, everyone, because we're gonna be doing election coverage. I'll give you more details on that in the near future. In the nearest future, though, we're gonna be talking about a lot of stories today. It's a weird News Wednesday. We've got sequels to Anne Frank diaries and maybe the most racist mainstream ad I've seen in some time. We've got anti-trans harassment, blackface in Walmart. We got a whole bunch of nonsense. And we have kittens and puppies and the people who hate them. So there's a lot to look forward to. In advance of all that, please hit the like button and share the stream so that people know we're live. And if you want to send Jayar or myself any comments, tweets, or super chats, we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Jayar, are you ready to start the show?
I like kittens and or puppies, so yeah.
Do you? Because you got a really cute puppy. You don't seem to love him. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. For now, though, let's talk about the Pelosi story. Seems like pretty much every day new details come out in the attack against Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi. Some of these getting into the motivations of the attacker as well as his history, just really shocking stuff. Prosecutors allege that he, David DePape, the attacker, told police that he was on, quote, in his own words, a suicide mission, saying, I'm sick of the insane effing level of lies coming out of Washington, D.C. I came here to have a little chat with his wife. I didn't really want to hurt him, but this was a suicide mission. I'm not gonna stand here and do nothing, even if it cost me my life. Hurting him was not my goal. I told him before I attacked him that he's escalating things and I will go through him if I have to. And that's definitely fair. You break into a guy's house, tell him you're looking for his wife and say to cops that your plan is to shatter her kneecaps. And him not complying is really escalating things. It was uncouth and impolite of Paul Pelosi to have an issue with this guy's suicide mission that he was on. But take a look at that. Like, I'm sick of the lies coming out of Washington, D.C. So he does an attack that inspires, as we'll get into in a little bit, an insane level of lying coming out of D.C. and basically every other part of the country to cover for the attack that he was involved in. He goes on to say to the cops that he had other plans. He had named several targets, quote, including a local professor, several prominent state and federal politicians, and relatives of those state and federal politicians. I have no idea how he planned to take down other politicians after invading the home of Nancy Pelosi with a hammer. That was his plan is absolute madness. But we already know that the guy is crazy. We also found out, by the way, that Paul Pelosi was unconscious in a pool of his own blood for 3 minutes following the hammer attack. That's coming out now. And Halloween just happened. My wife and I, for weeks now, we've been watching horror movies. And what I can't get past is this attack that basically every right winger thinks is either proof of some sort of homosexual plot or something, or at the very least is very funny, would fit almost perfectly into any one of these horror movies that I've been watching. It is as horrifying as anything Hollywood can come up with, that you would wake up in the middle of the night, a crazy person has broken into your house, wielding a hammer and tells you, "I'm looking for your wife." And you have to try with everything that you can, as clever as you can be, to stop him from killing you, from possibly leaving to track down your wife, hurting someone else, all at the risk of your skull being shattered with a hammer. And in the end, you do get hit and you're left clinging to life. And then coming out of it, half of the political spectrum thinks that it's at least cause for jokes, it's funny. Or maybe it's proof that you and your wife are bad. You're the cause of this. You deserve what happened to you. It is really sick stuff, Jayar.
Yeah, it's sick stuff, and it's what we've been hearing about. None of this stuff we're going, oh man, I just heard about that. There's a reason why you haven't just heard about that. It's because many other people are saying this stuff. I'm glad you brought up the whole thing about he's sick and tired of the lies in Washington, D.C., because I want to address the fact that everyone, not everyone, but the folks who don't want to admit what this was, from the political motivation of the attacks, based off of what certain people are saying, which we can track right to the words coming out of their mouths, to deny all this stuff. That's the tactic now. So who would have told her that Nancy Pelosi is solely responsible for all of the lies of Washington, D.C.? Do you think Democrats told her that? Do you think folks that follow Nancy Pelosi and do her bidding told you that? They do her bidding. Why would they tell him that? Who would have told him that? I'll tell you who. The pundits, these overpaid pundits, elected officials, even people that aspire to be elected officials, which some of them will be elected next week into office. They say things like these groomers are going into bathrooms. These people are in support of women's rights because they want to drink the blood of babies so they don't look like they're actually 112 years old. Which people are drinking the bloods of babies and then they actually look 75 years old, because all of these old ass politicians are around that age anyway. Which ones would really be 115 years old and are actually 87? I don't know. How about you go ahead and prove that out? One more thing here. They also said things like, hey, all those rioters and those insurrectionists that ran up on the Capitol on January 6th were BLM, Antifa, and political prisoners. They believe all this stuff. But you know who we called the crazy one? The guy who listened to them. Yeah, is it 100%. That they know he's crazy, also, or did they drive him to that? Or is he just listening to what you told him is reality?
I think the comparison you're making is even better than you think it is, maybe, because there's this new thing where, like, it's an indisputably bad event that looks terrible for your side. So you need something to deflect from it, but it doesn't have to be good. It can be the most pathetic excuse. Like, so as we're gonna get into, why haven't we seen the tape? Well, what does it matter what we've seen the tape? We know who the person is. We know that he ended up in the hospital with a hammer wound to the head. Yeah, but I don't know, I haven't seen the tape. Maybe they should have better security. Why didn't they have better security? Isn't that weird? Isn't that the thing that we should think about right now? Why didn't Nancy Pelosi have better security in her house? It's the exact same thing as when they attacked the Capitol. They're trying to kill Mike Pence. They're trying to kill Nancy Pelosi. Why didn't Nancy Pelosi call the National Guard, which she's not in charge of? And she did try to get as much protection as possible on that day. How is that a response to what happened? But it's just a deflection. And it's almost conveniently moronic. Like, it's not like they couldn't come up with something better. Yeah. We're talking about thousands of political actors who spend all their time thinking about this. It's almost like they're intentionally coming up with something that is so dumb that it makes the entire thing dumb. Again, they're trying to drag us all down to their level. They don't want politics to be something that is serious and important and maybe sometimes honorable or productive that delivers. No, it's all supposed to be cruel and awful and gross and endlessly stupid. And so we're seeing that here. I have a lot more that I'm gonna say about some of the conspiracy theories and how stupid they are in a little bit. But first, I wanna get into this. More details are now being developed and spread about The actual attacker who tried to murder Paul Pelosi, wanted to murder Nancy Pelosi. Carpenter, who apparently worked with him, Frank Ciccarelli, worked with him for 6 years, say that DePape began to spend more time online over the last few years, engulfed in right-wing conspiracy theories. He said if you got him talking about politics, it was all over, because he really believed in the whole MAGA, Pizzagate, stolen election, all of it, all the way down the line. If you go to Fox News, if you go on the internet and you look at QAnon, he had all these theories. He says that the time DePape spent roaming the dark web led him to become increasingly isolated and wanting to work less in the carpentry business. He was completely caught up in the fantasy, in the MAGA fantasy. And so who's surprised by this? Yeah, the guy became radicalized over the past few years, spending way too much time online, not having the critical thinking faculties necessary to separate fact from fiction. Convenient lies started to get spread, and webs of insanity that he could throw himself into, pitch himself as the victim, convenient villains to throw all of his insecurities or issues onto. This is not a new story. It's not a unique story. Virtually everyone who commits acts of political violence had something like this in their recent past. So we can't be shocked like this. And we can't expect that the right is going to seriously think about what this means. But we at least have to recognize that this is a thing that happens. It happens quite frequently, and it does result in attacks like this, and more often actually, mass violence, actual mass murders. Jared, what do you think?
The folks that push this stuff, they know, they've read this. The ones that know it and didn't read it because they don't want to actually have to be confronted with the information in their face. They can go, I didn't read that, I didn't see that. You see it in interviews sometimes when someone's confronted by what they've said or what someone else that they support, this being many politicians, said, they go, I didn't see it, I didn't hear it. So they need to ignore the fact that this is right there in everyone's face. We've seen Tucker Carlson railing, asking questions that have been answered many times about this. But in order to normalize this type of behavior, you have to bring everyone down to the stupidity that's there. So if he believes all this stuff, which they've been announcing, they can't say no one has been saying this. What they have to say is like, look at what she did. Look at how he did. Hey, did you, maybe you can consider that Paul Pelosi's gay. Remember we said to hate gay people? Therefore you can distance yourself from any kind of empathy towards what happened and maybe come back to the reasons why it happened and say, I think I want to detach myself from these violent people. Mm-hmm. They have to make sure none of that happens. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, they have to accept it all. Now the acceptance is violence. That's gonna become the norm because that's why there's jokes about the whole thing. Carrie Lake and Trump Jr. posting jokes about it because it has to be something that's just normalized. And if it's normalized to a stupid level, it's also stupid now. The dumbing down of the country.
Look, we've been talking now for years about the normalization of all of this extreme nonsense, but particularly the normalization of political violence. And I really do think that this is as bad as it's ever been. At least with January 6th, it took some of them a few days. Like there were people on the day being like, no, it's totally Antifa or something. They watched Donald Trump speak for 2 hours, then marched over and became Antifa. But most Republicans seemed to agree that this was bad until they realized that Trump was gonna be just fine and they still needed his support. But when it comes to the Pelosi thing, like it was immediate. And basically all of them agreed that something else was worth focusing on, either the gay prostitute thing, or that it's just funny, or that it's just about crime. Instantly, an assassination plot against the Speaker of the House didn't give us 5 minutes of reflection on the right, and that should worry all of us. And if you look at the right now, like they're still like it doesn't matter that all this stuff has been debunked. They're still actively spreading it. They're still saying, well, I just want answers to questions. Why aren't they giving us more facts? You haven't cared about literally any of the facts that have come out. You've disregarded all of them instantaneously. And so, look, I'm just really worried again. Like I said on the show yesterday, what lessons are being drawn from other crazy people that are thinking about attacking someone powerful? Like, are they actually being taught by their leaders that this is unacceptable, that this isn't a good thing to do? I don't see how they could possibly be drawing that lesson. And by the way,
he's a lone wolf, John. He's a lone wolf.
100%, yeah. There's a lot of them. Lone wolves tend to travel in packs, I've noticed. There are so many of them. This goes all the way up to the top, by the way. He waited a little bit before weighing in, but now let's jump into Donald Trump on this.
It's weird things going on in that household in the last couple of weeks. Probably you and I are better not talking about it, but it seems was broken from the inside to the out. And, it wasn't a break in, it was a breakout. I don't know. You hear the same things I do.
Yeah, the 9/11 tape seems to suggest that that he knew the identity of the guy.
Yeah. It's a lot of bad stuff. I'm not a fan of Nancy Pelosi, but what's going on there is very sad.
What is going on in this country is very sad. What was going on in that tape is pretty much what we should have expected from the very beginning. That just happened in the last day. And Donald Trump and whoever the hell that was he was talking about, I don't care and you shouldn't either. Some right winger, it doesn't matter. There's 1,000 of them. They crank him out of a factory or something. They are saying things that weren't true on the first day and were debunked on that first day. We're days and days since they've been debunked, and they're still saying them because they think it's convenient. The idea that they knew each other, they didn't know each other. Nobody on the investigation side is saying that they know each other. The attacker isn't saying that. The police aren't saying that. The Pelosi's aren't saying that. Literally nobody's saying that. You just like it because then it seems sort of conspiratorial. The idea that the glass was broken from the inside, it was a breakout. Even if that was true, what the hell would that mean? A guy came into Paul Pelosi's house with a hammer. If in theory, maybe Paul Pelosi tried to break out of the house, he was being attacked by a psycho. Why would that be proof of something conspiratorial? And by the way, it's not true. It was debunked literally days ago. We already know the police have made clear the dude broke into the house. That's one of the reasons he had the hammer. The other being that he wanted to shatter Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps. You'll notice they don't just sort of gloss over that. There's weird things going on in that house over the past few weeks. Well, there was one weird thing. Someone tried to assassinate the Speaker of the House. I guess that is one weird thing, but both of them agree that, I don't know, what are you gonna say? Weird things, they're not giving us all the facts. And all along the way, did you notice how much the host was chuckling there? And this topic was funny to him. It's not a serious mystery. They're pretending that they're confused about things and they want answers, but they're not approaching this like Sherlock Holmes. They're approaching this like they're watching stand-up comedy. Why are they laughing so much? Paul Pelosi is still in the hospital. Nancy Pelosi's got to be terrified that there will be another attempt on her life or the life of a member of her family. And they are getting chuckles out of it, Jayar.
That's the idea. That's the whole plan here. This is a fun and game thing. I keep comparing it to football games. They don't think there's any kind of real finality behind this. And if it is, these people are subhuman. Again, that's why there's a speculation and the lies. Oh yeah, he's gay, right? Because then we don't care about gay people, right? We murder them. Remember, we don't care about their lives. That's why there's always these. That's why the fact they're mad about people pushing that we should announce that other minorities' lives matter, because it's been pushed on us so many times that none of them do. And when you let people like this who attack folks think that, it makes it much easier to attack. One more thing here, because as you point out, the police actually debunked all of these things that they said happened and why it's a conspiracy and why this is all fake and all that stuff. When are conservatives, I just wanna know, as a concerned American, the red, white, and blue national anthem. I'm trying to figure out when these conservatives are gonna stop hating the police. I thought you guys are supposed to fund the police. Don't you trust the police and their investigations? They said one thing and you just don't believe them. I don't know why these conservatives hate America. Maybe they should move somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe. And by the way, so it's Trump. I know we shouldn't have any expectations for him. He was only the president of the United States. It's like they treat him like he's like the dumb 5-year-old down the street or something. We're not supposed to be able to have any expectations. He was the president, and there's at least a 50-50 chance he's the president again in a couple of years. But it isn't just him. Even on Fox, on the not that they're often reasonable, but Fox and Friends occasionally will split from Trump and the others. They're saying all the misinformation is out there because they have not told the facts. That's what it is. The misinformation is being spread because the cops aren't revealing enough information. Literally every day we give you updates on all the information that's coming out. We know tons about the guy, his motivations, what his plot was, how the attack actually happened. But I don't know, not enough facts. That's probably why people are talking about it being a gay prostitution thing that went wrong. Kilmeade says, who opened the door? The dude broke in. We've known that for literally days. Was the surveillance system on? Did they even have a security system? How did they get in? Well, yeah, you can have a security system and someone can bash in a window and come into the house. That's a thing that could potentially happen. Was there a third? All of this is because no one would answer basic questions. You'll notice he started to ask, was there a third person there? And then Brian Kilmeade apparently realized, oh wait, that is one of the ones that we initially thought in the first day there was a third person, but then we didn't like a couple of hours later. I should probably imply that in the last 4 days, I've understood that. So he stopped his own question. Earhart says, I read there was broken glass. I don't know if he broke the glass and then went in through the window. What are you talking about? We've known that for literally days at this point. They are multimillionaires whose only job in life is to discuss the news and they have no idea what's going on. Kilmeade says, then you find out they're wrestling. And then after the cops get in there, he hits them with a hammer. Bizarre. No, your show is bizarre. The guy came in to kill them. Yes, at some point an attack might happen. Maybe Paul Pelosi did a weird thing where he didn't just consent to being hit in the head and he tried to fight the guy off. And then the guy, seeing the cops, hits him with a hammer, knowing that this was his suicide mission and he was going to try to achieve something, even if it resulted in him being shot and killed. What about this is difficult to understand? That is 3 people, technically all of them possessing a brain. And even with the combined neurons of all 3 of them, they can't work through what seems like a shocking, if fairly simplistic attack, a domestic assault. He broke in to kill people. That's the story. It shouldn't take a collective, what, $8 million salary a year to be able to understand that.
That's not what they're paid to do, John. They're paid to do exactly what they did. Toe that line, push that conspiracy, ask the questions that have been answered, but keep asking them because they know their core audience goes nowhere else but to them. So once they've told you, that's the beginning and the end of it. And anytime you step out of those lines, you lose that, you say $8 million a year salary. Remember this lady named Gretchen Carlson who got harassed and she goes, I'm through with this. Haven't seen or heard from her since. As far as Fox News goes, she's still pushing it, is pushing that whole thing. But they're definitely done with that. The payment stops when you stop with the same lines.
Yeah. Remember, Andrea Tantaros is talking about being harassed. I literally have not seen her in 5 years, I think. So they know they're supposed to play ball or else that's it. You're done. Your entire side is done. Okay, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, we've got a lot of other topics to talk about, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Creative Pixie says Jayar be charging that candy tax. Anyway, okay, we got a lot more news to talk about. Some of it's pretty serious, sorry, but buckle up. We're jumping into this.
Republicans will never lose another election in Wisconsin after I'm elected governor.
If only there was an expression for like what you're supposed to do when they tell you who they are. Yeah, that was Tim Michels wants to be governor of Wisconsin, assuring his supporters who loved it. They just were a big fan of what he had to say. That once he is in charge, once he has executive power in the state, Republicans will never lose another election. I guess they'll just become so popular. That's probably what he means. He's not implying anything about manipulating the voting system or helping to ensure that they have judges in place who will let the Republicans do whatever they want. No, this is obviously really dark stuff. Said not on a hot mic or something like that, not on a blog post from 10 years ago. This was a guy knowing he was being videotaped, talking to his supporters, assuring them that he would make sure that democracy is a figment of the past. It's window dressing at best. It won't matter. Democrats will never win office in Wisconsin again. Tony Evers, who's running against Tim Michels, says, folks, we've known this for a while. Tim Michels is a danger to our democracy. When you head to the polls on election day, remember that we're fighting to protect our democracy, voting rights, and free, fair, and safe elections. By the way, he is talking about not ending a robust democracy in Wisconsin. He's talking about finishing it off, because let's be clear about the state of Wisconsin. It is already incredibly manipulated, biased, rigged towards the Republicans right now. In fact, as a result of the last new set of gerrymanders, The number of GOP leading seats in the state assembly has increased from 61 to 63. This is out of just 99. And from 21 to 23 out of 33 states in the state Senate. There right now, analyses show Democrats would have to win the statewide vote by 12 points just to get to 50 seats in the assembly. Republicans can garner a majority with just 44% of votes. And so Wisconsin's not alone in this. Many states have already done this. It is almost impossible for the Democrats to win, even if they win in the way that we've always thought led to you being in power in a democracy. He's talking about taking that rigged system and finishing off any possibility of Democrats getting elected at any level. Jayar, what do you think?
It's crazy though. We saw the January 6th committee talk about how these local electors were trying to put in place, at least the fake ones, at least even local officials in many of these states, these battleground states, were trying to tilt the election in Donald Trump's favor with fake electors and skimming the system and accusing other folks of throwing out ballots, all this stuff. When this guy says something like, if I'm elected here, I'm gonna make sure that we never lose an election again in this state, that's giving a head nod to be like, we're not gonna mess this up next time. This has nothing to do with policy, it has nothing to do with representing the people, it has nothing to do with making people's lives better. Did you hear him say anything about that? Did you hear him say, we're never gonna lose another election in this state because the people will continue to vote for us because of how much we've done for them, because of how much we've represented them, because of how much their lives are better. Because when we talk about how great America is, they're gonna be experiencing it because of our policies. None of that came up. It was just, we're never gonna lose again. You know, could easily say something like that. Matthew Stafford, quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, who just won a Super Bowl last year. You can go to your parade afterwards and go, we're gonna win it again next year. And the crowd goes, wow, yeah, we're gonna win it next year. That has nothing to do with what they're gonna do for you. They're just gonna win it again. It has nothing to do with anything. This is a sporting event now. When it comes to politics being like, hey, our team is gonna win no matter what does that have to do with the folks sitting there screaming? What does that have to do with you? Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl. He's got AT&T endorsements. He's got probably Campbell's soup commercials, probably got Wheaties commercials. He made a lot of money. I'm a big Rams fan. I was very happy when they won the Super Bowl. You know how much of that money I got?
Like 5%? No,
so what's the point of me supporting him? It's just because I like my team. This is what it's come down to. You get nothing from them, but you get to support the team.
What if you didn't care? There was no reason for you to want your team to win, but the only pleasure you had in your awful, awful life was the other team's losing. Yep. And you may be sitting on a bus and seeing like a fan of a different team and they're crying or something. What if that was the only joy you had in your life?
I'm glad you brought it up. I have a 10-year-old kid who's also a Rams fan. And you know who he was very happy that the Rams beat last year? The Bucks, because Tom Brady, who he dislikes, is on the Bucks. He's like, we finished off Tom Brady. He cared about making the other guy who he dislikes sad and retire.
He wants to own the Toms.
What you can do as a sports fan, because this doesn't count.
Yeah, that's
for your
true.
Life.
Yeah, and just to tweak your metaphor a bit, it's not quite like a quarterback saying we're never gonna lose a game again. It's like a ref being like, choose me as ref, and the Bucks will never lose again. Except, like it's supposed to be a democracy. But don't worry, this guy will never get into office. According to the recent polls, he's down by 0.2.
Jesus.
I don't know how we're gonna keep track of all of these on election day. We'll be doing live coverage. There are so many incredibly consequential elections that we need to keep track of. But for now, we're gonna move on. Oh, sorry, you had a last comment?
No. I'm just exhausted with this entire situation in this country.
I think it's time for maybe something a little bit inspiring, a little bit uplifting. We've actually got something like that for you. Why don't we start off with this?
They stormed the Capitol on January 6th. They beat up 140 police officers, killed one. Okay, they killed one.
Tim Ryan is a Democrat running for Senate in Ohio, and in that town hall on Fox News, clearly bringing up January 6th is not gonna go well for you. Almost instantly, once he acknowledged that the right wingers were trying to kill cops with their bare hands, they began to boo him. And so you probably imagine, well, that's not gonna go well, right? Well, actually, he is able to turn it around. Take a look at the direction this goes.
We all watched the video. We all watched the video, and
Let him finish, please.
And I'm happy to have this conversation. I'm not afraid to have this conversation. These are the conversations we need to have in this country. I welcome you guys. Let's just be respectful, but I'm not afraid to stand here and defend my position. On January 6th, 140, I sit on the subcommittee that funds the Capitol Police. These are my friends. 140 of them got hurt. And some of them still can't go back to work because they were beat up with lead pipes. They were sprayed with pepper spray. They were beaten with flagpoles, okay? They were trying to overthrow the government. They were trying to stop the peaceful transition of the government. What else were they doing there? They're gonna kill Mike Pence, right? They want to kill Nancy Pelosi. Now somebody's beating up Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer. J.D. Vance raised money for the insurrectionists. He made several social media posts to raise money for them. Now, again, I don't care what your politics are, but Americans should say no. We have to say no to that.
We're gonna try to get as many questions as.
Okay, so look, I'm not gonna exaggerate. It's not like everyone in the crowd was thrilled about that, but the boos did not return after his strong defense of, not killing cops, I suppose. People were actually clapping, and the others who had been happy to literally boo and hiss at Tim Ryan, they weren't doing that anymore. I thought that was look, I'm not a massive fan of Tim Ryan or anything, obviously, Jayar, but I thought that was a pretty amazing little turnaround he was able to achieve there.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens whenever you speak facts in reality. That's why I always said, if you have facts on your side, it shouldn't be that hard. Just state them. And if you state them in a way that people hear, let them start booing. And I can't believe you said reality. Go, well, listen to some reality and see if you disagree with this. Because what it does, it puts the onus on the people who are lying with absolutely zero credibility or any kind of backing to it to then have to answer a question. And on my show a little earlier, we showed some videos of Michael Shore talking to Trump supporters, and none of them had the answer after what they believe. He goes, so why do you believe it? Then what happens? There's no answers. Here's the reason why. If you have a collective group of people, they get to just lean on each other and be like, yeah, that guy's dumb too, so I don't have to have any explanation for it. But when he breaks down and says, this is what happened. These folks went into the Capitol. Nobody disagrees with that. This many officers were assaulted and some died afterwards because of all this. Nobody disagrees that happened. And J.D. Vance raised money for them and in support of them. You can hate me, but why do you support somebody who's raising money for violent people? They have to then be confronted with that reality and either go, I'm okay with it or I'm not okay with it. J.D. Vance was okay with it. Am I okay with it? It has to finally make their identity be theirs again. Because so far, their identity is MAGA. If you're not MAGA, you're on the wrong side. They don't even know what the hell MAGA is. It's not them, it's what they believe because now they support this one guy who somehow inspired them to be pieces of garbage.
Yeah, look, if you want, you can find video of Tim Ryan going on I think MSNBC later on. He was talking about why he decided to do this town hall, knowing that it was gonna be a stacked, hostile audience. And I think he demonstrated that there can be value to it. He talks about how you have to go into the lion's den to pull people over. And I know there's this constant debate about whether, Tim Ryan's not a leftist or anything, but whether Democrats or leftists should go on Fox News. And I think his argument is exactly the right one. You should be willing to go on there to bring people over. You just go on there and agree with the right wingers. I don't really see the value of that. That's like the worst thing that you can do. But for Tim Ryan, he showed that it can be worth it. If you're persuasive, if you back up what you have to say with facts, you can potentially win people over. And I think that there's a lot of value to that. And with that said, let's move on to one of the weirdest stories I've had to talk about in quite a while. Let's jump into this. An evangelical candidate running in Texas wants to enter the House wrote a novel not too many years ago. It's a sequel to the Diary of Anne Frank. That's such a weird sentence. Why you would choose to write a sequel to something with so much gravity, so much historic weight, so much just revealed so much truth of the horror of that time, of the Holocaust, that you as an evangelical would choose to do that. That's really ballsy, I guess, is one way to say it. Terrible, potentially. But it turns out that in practice, it's even worse than you might think. So he's already won the district's primary. He's the actual candidate. And I decided to go look for this book. You can see a shot of it right here. Doesn't appear to still be on Amazon. They apparently took it down now that people are talking about it. But this is the Lost Diary of Anne Frank. And you can see that it's only got 2 stars. Okay, this is the Lost Diary of Anne Frank, published in 2020. It imagines the Jewish Holocaust victims' final days in Auschwitz, and how she might have written about them in her diary, missing the fact that you're not allowed to write in a diary when the Nazis are imprisoning you and eventually killing you, but I guess you gotta give him his premise. Here is what makes it actually worse. In it, she appears to convert or come close to converting to Christianity before she's murdered for being Jewish. Okay, it was published by History of Books. It attempts to, in their words, faithfully extend the writing style of Frank's original diary, picks up where her original journey left off. That's one way to put it. Teague claims to have interviewed Holocaust survivors and visited the Anne Frank house, multiple concentration camps, and the major Holocaust museums in Washington, D.C. and Israel as part of his research. But I just wanted to read a little bit from the one review of this book on Goodreads because I thought it was amazing. It says, what made me pause reading and find out more about the man behind the book was when Teague had Anne reciting the Lord's Prayer. You read that right. Teague had a 15-year-old girl imprisoned at Auschwitz for no other reason that she was born a Jew, surrounded by death every single day, invoking the Lord's Prayer because it brought her comfort. Not a Hebrew prayer her mother or father may have said while Anne was growing up, but a Christian prayer she had never heard before. To say I was livid doesn't even begin to touch on how I felt reading these passages. I'm Christian, by the way. The arrogance, the audacity. What sort of man does something so utterly disrespectful to not only Anne Frank, but to the 6 million Jews lost in the Holocaust? He has her at one point say, I would love to learn more about Jesus and all he faced in his dear life as a Jewish teacher. I don't know what would make it okay for you to decide as an old evangelical man that you get to write the sequel to this young slain Jewish girl's diary, but making it where in your telling, she says in the end that all of your religious beliefs are actually the right ones and her and her family that were all killed, they're the crazy ones. That's not the way to go, Jayar. What do you think?
So I'm trying to figure the point of this. So someone
money, I guess.
Yeah, John, you've written a book, right?
I have.
When you started that book,
it was not a sequel. It was not a sequel to the Diary of Anne Frank. I'll say that.
Good. But if you did, or even in the book that you did write, which I think is what it's fiction, a novel, right? So the idea is you have an end game here. You have a point you want to get to. Maybe you want to inspire the reader, and maybe you want them to feel certain things. There's usually a direction. There's something you want to get to. What's the reason for this guy? What's the end game? When he woke up one morning and went, I've got it. Anne Frank converted. Why is that inspirational to you? Do you think it's gonna make people?
Guess?
Do you think Jewish folks are gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna convert to Christianity because of this stupid ass book. Is that the conclusion he's looking for?
My guess would be that, like a lot of evangelicals, I don't think he actually gives a damn about Jewish people or what they believe or whatever. Jewish people in Israel are convenient for some of the geopolitical goals. I don't think they really care about Jewish people. I would say that all this is a way more involved version of what you get when a right-wing politician or pundit decides to start talking about Martin Luther King Jr. So, and saying he probably would have been totally MAGA and he would have wanted to build that wall. They have no sympathetic or inspirational characters on their side. It is utterly devoid of heroism or compassion or achievement or whatever. So they have to steal them. And if you can steal Martin Luther King Jr., why can't you steal Anne Frank? She's really inspirational, very brave, inspiring to a lot of people, a lot of young people. She's ours now. She's gonna be conservative, she's gonna be evangelical, she's the best, and we're the best because she's ours. I think that's probably what it is.
It's weird how that's it's a irregularity of taking over the purity of someone else because you've run out of yours. You're like, let's go ahead and let's take that in. It's like ingesting it so maybe you can fit it in your own stomach. So also outside of that, if she converted to Christianity right before the Nazis showed up, who's the bad guy? Weren't the Nazis the Christians, right? I mean, at least in their minds, at least enough people that they've convinced to believe so. So which one of these folks is the good and bad guy? And as far as this inspiration for what people may want to believe or take from this book, which side is the good guys here?
Yeah.
Is he saying that these Christians that showed up and murdered her, they were the good guys because she converted?
Look, there were clearly people fighting against the Nazis who were Christians. That is definitely a true thing.
But they
at the
believe
same time,
they said they.
Yeah. Oh no, the Nazis were explicitly Christian. It was all over. Like check their belt buckles and stuff like that. But the idea that you would be experiencing religiously grounded, lethal persecution, and would, while experiencing that, decide that that side is right, is the weirdest projected hypothetical Stockholm syndrome that I think I've ever seen. This guy is, again, running for office. We'll see if this is a good campaign strategy. I hope that it's not, but this is America, so stay tuned to find out. With that said, we do have to take our last break of the hour. When we come back, we've got an absolutely bonkers political ad to play for you, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, everyone, brace yourself. Let's jump into this.
When did racism against white people become okay? Joe Biden put white people last in line for COVID relief funds. Kamala Harris said disaster aid should go to non-white citizens first. Liberal politicians block access to medicine based on skin color. Progressive corporations, airlines, universities all openly discriminate against white Americans. Racism is always wrong. The left's anti-white bigotry must stop. We are all entitled to equal treatment under law. America First Legal paid for this ad.
Okay, racism is always wrong. Are they not merciful? Thank you, Stephen Miller, by the way. It's his group that put this together. They've spent every day of their life denying that racism exists, except when it's left-wing anti-white racism, and then they'll acknowledge it. Let's pause for a second. That is among the most explicitly racist advertisements I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you wanted to start a race war, what sort of advertising would you do along the way to get us towards that? In a country where there has been no end to the mass political violence explicitly on racial grounds over the past few years, Stephen Miller very well aware of that. He's been inspiring this sort of bigotry on the right wing for a number of years. That ad, by the way, is running in Augusta, Savannah, Albany, Columbus, a number of different places. Like you see it down in Tallahassee. And Jayar, we're gonna link this to a very similar ad that came out a number of years ago. But what did you make of that?
I know small things. Can you run the ad just next to me again, you guys? Because I'm not sure if these were like random folks that they just found like some stock footage of on the internet, or if they actually asked for actors that look up and look like they're oppressed white folks. Look at this. So if you're directing these folks, you go, okay, so look up and look oppressed, and that's the look on their face. You're supposed to go like we're not really sure what it's supposed to look like. Like, what is this? That's oppression? Oh. Like this is what's supposed to be getting transferred into people's brains into thinking, look at these oppressed white people. They can't live anymore. Yeah, we see reality of news reports of what happens to folks. We see the reasons why there was even those protests in 2020. Was that about the oppression of white folks? No, they were mad at the white folks that actually joined in and realized the degree of police brutality and murder that happens across the country indiscriminately, and they always get away with it. Things like that is what inspired folks to realize something, and they got really mad. The more and more reality and truth seeps into the general society's conscious, then that's when they're like, okay, we have to do something about this because they're starting to catch on. Let's go with some lies. What is this based off? What are the stories behind this? Who are the names that we have to call out for all this anti-white racism?
You can see, look, this is why billionaires on the right have put together something that looks at the surface level like an entire sort of media thing. So they can make ads like that, but they need headlines implying that this stuff is going on. So what do? They have headlines from the Daily Wire. It's the same exact people. It's just another pack of bigots. That's all it is, except it's technically a headline. They technically said the Kamala Harris is like disaster aid's only gonna go to non-white people. Did she actually say that? Did they actually do that? No, it didn't actually happen. They talked there about antivirals and stuff not going to white people. So first of all, bear in mind, Daily Wire and Stephen Miller believe, or they would have you believe, that those antivirals will kill you. You shouldn't take any of that. You shouldn't trust doctors or take any medication whatsoever. But the medicine that will definitely kill you, isn't it mean that they won't give it to you if you're white? They won't give you the poison. What a racist thing to do. And so they have these bigoted, biased news sites that make these headlines, and then they can use those for the rest of time, and every Republican will accept it. Look, that's how they get to this. The point of this is they are trying to train conservative voters not to respond to sort of subtle like appeals to racism, to believe that white people are victims in literally everything. They're done with that. That's 1970s, 1980s Southern strategy stuff. No, this is explicit now. All of the Democrats are trying to kill white people and drive them out of business. So you should think about your politics only through the lens of your white skin. That there's no subtlety. It is 100% explicit. And look, there have been attempts to do this in the past, but even then, some of the, like if you were to Google most racist political ads ever, they were more subtle than this. Take a look at this ad from back in the day.
You needed that job, and you were the best qualified, but they had to give it to a minority because of a racial quota. Is that really fair? Harvey Gantt says it is. Gantt supports Ted Kennedy's racial quota law that makes the color of your skin more important than your qualifications. You'll vote on this issue next Tuesday. For racial quotas, Harvey Gantt. Against racial quotas, Jesse Helms.
So that is the Jesse Helms hands ad that has been an utter racist embarrassment for literally decades. And it was way more subtle than what Stephen Miller put together. There, they just implied that a white person's job is being taken because you see some white hands or whatever. And look at that black politician. He's gonna throw you out in the street. You're not gonna be able to feed your family because these racial quotas and everything. That was not nearly as explicit as what Stephen Miller put together in this ad. And flyers are going out. Exactly. It is, we are in a way more bigoted racist time than we were before. Trump really has inspired them to be out in all of their hatreds and fears.
Before the call for violence back in the day with all the normalcy is like, hey, those minorities, they're dangerous, they're killers. We have to kill them. They're lesser human beings. Now it's the same thought process, but it's like, but now they're more aggressive in coming for us and taking this and that, which actually that was kind of the message then too. But now it's we're the oppressed. We have to fight back because we're the oppressed. So if black folks and other minorities were oppressed before, shouldn't they have had a violent uprising too? Just wondering, since you think you're supposed to have one based off of this nonsense.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's just terrible. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for the first hour of our show. If you're on the linear platforms of the podcast, thank you so much for watching and or listening. But we have a lot more to get to in the aftermath. So don't go anywhere. You can look forward after this brief little break. We're gonna be talking about kittens and puppies and how you should draw no emotional sport whatsoever from them. We've got blackface at Walmart and more. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this. By the way, I'd like to make a request. If anyone at TYT is watching this, please stop filling the candy bowl, you psychopaths. I'm going to die. There's like 3 people in this building for the first 8 hours. It's literally like 3 people. There are 2 massive bowls of candy. And so when they filled it, I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna end up eating it all. Let me just burn through this. Let me speed run this candy. I come back next day. It's full again. I'm going to get diabetes. Stop it. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Iffy. I don't know if it's Leah, but you have to stop, please.
Don't.
For my wife's sake, stop with the candy.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.